The famous Chilkoot Pass, a wall almost 300 meters high. What are we doing here? Well, it's a story that began 120 years ago. On July 15, 1897, prospectors returning from the Klondike arrived in San Francisco and Seattle, and with them, a fabulous quantity of gold. In this time of economic gloom, that's all it took to trigger the last great gold rush in history. Overnight, thousands of men and a few women left San Francisco, Seattle, and Vancouver to make their fortunes in the Klondike. But the Klondike is not easily accessible. Located nearly 500 kilometers as the crow flies from the nearest coast, and with no roads, our future millionaires must first travel to Dyea or Skagway, Alaska. From there, the Chilkoot Trail takes them to Bennett Lake, the source of the Yukon River. Dyea. This is where the adventure really begins. Since there was absolutely nothing at the destination, our stampeders had to bring everything with them. The Canadian government required each stampeder to bring enough food to survive for 1 year. Today, there's nothing left of Dyea, except a few stakes in the ground and a cemetery. And it is a little upstream of Dyea that our adventure begins. Our group of 8 hikers retrace the footsteps of the ghost of the Klondike. The Chilkoot Trail is now a national park jointly administered by the United States and Canada. It is a popular destination for backpackers.
C'est encore loin?
Ouais, 20 minutes. All right.
On est parti?
C'est parti.
Vous avez besoin d'arrêter parce que vous avez besoin d'ajouter quelque chose.
Dites-le.
9h14, 6 juillet.
The trail is 53 kilometers long, and camps are set up where historically boom towns have sprung up and where stampeders set up their camps. That is, Finnegan's Point, Canyon City, Pleasant Camp, Sheep Camp, Happy Camp, Deep Lake, Lindeman City, Loon Lake, and finally, Bennett Lake. Our first destination is Canyon City, with a stop at Finnegan's Point. Except for a climb at the beginning and end of today's leg, we have relatively little elevation gain. Bear deterrent is critical.
Okay.
Right on, you guys.
All right.
Hello.
Hi.
Oh, look at those small packs. Oh my God, it's the dog that has all the gear.
Dyea had the serious disadvantage of having a shallow riverbed. The less fortunate arrived at low tide and had to hurry to disembark and bring their food and equipment ashore before the tide came in. At its peak in 1898, Dyea had a population of 5,000 to 8,000 people, nearly 50 hotels and restaurants, 39 saloons, and 19 transportation companies. We don't walk exactly on the original trail because the Taya River has shifted over time.
Tag down?
Tag down, photo, il y a une bonne brise,
OK.
il n'y a pas de moustique.
Parfait.
We were warned that some bridges should only be crossed by one person at a time. A newly built boardwalk in perfect condition allows us to cross the beaver pond. These first remains do not date back to the gold rush. They date from the 1940s and 50s when a sawmill was operating here. Arrival for lunch at Finnegan's Point. All camps have a prospector tent. Dark, humid, and not very inviting. They are surely more appreciated in cold or rainy weather, or mosquito season. A bit of climbing after lunch. The vegetation is amazing. The idea I had of Alaska was rather rock and moss. Arrival at Canyon City Camp. The log cabin was built in the 1960s by prisoners who were used as laborers to restore the American section of the Chilkoot Trail. The first thing to do is to store the food in bear-proof lockers. Then, 100 meters further, we set up the tent. The historic town of Canyon City is 800 meters beyond the Canyon City camp. I decide to go take a look so I can tell the others about it later. We must first cross the Taya River on a suspension bridge whose integrity is not at its best. One person at a time.
Okay, that should be interesting.
I quickly realize that walking alone here is not a good idea. There is a bear population that should not be ignored. So I start talking loudly, singing, whistling, so that no bear will be taken by surprise by my presence.
Historic town.
Canyon City was an organized city with blocks. In addition to hotels, restaurants, and outfitters, there was the post office, telegraph, hairdressers, doctor, and the streets were lit. Canyon City got its name from the fact that it is located at the bottom of a steep valley. It is from here that the ascent to the Chilkoot Pass starts for real. Entrepreneurs had sniffed out the good deal and had installed a cable car to transport goods over the Chilkoot Pass. Once in place, stampeders with a little more money could save themselves the effort of hauling their supplies themselves by using the cable car. And this is what remains of that time. This is the boiler that fed the steam engine to run the cable car.
Ici, probablement, ici, on mettait du charbon ou du bois. Est-ce qu'il y a quelque chose encore à l'intérieur? Pas grand-chose. On a encore des morceaux de fer. Ah, c'est un godin d'or comme ici.
Canyon City peaked at the same time as Dai in 1898 and experienced the same decline a year later.
On a les restants d'une maison ici, on dirait. Ouais, ça a l'air d'être une maison en pièce sur pièce avec quelques morceaux de métal.
A trail leads me to the North River. The sky becomes overcast and unfortunately, it starts raining. We brought the pancake mix, bacon, and maple syrup.
Fête à soir.
OK.
Quand vous restez en Beauce, c'est du fête qui n'a pas de quoi. Ça fait l'école, du fête. C'est le vocal de construction de fête. C'est un accident de fête. Quelqu'un qui est mort de fête. Toutes les raisons sont pas prendre un coup.
Today's schedule includes a stop at the Canyon City Historic Town, so the rest of the group can see the remains, then another stop at Pleasant Camp, and then on to Sheep Camp.
Juste une personne.
With a bit of imagination, you can see what Canyon City looked like at the time. Eight kilometers to get to Sheep Camp may seem easy, but don't underestimate the ascent. Ascent that begins here.
Bon, c'est bon ça.
We hike on the mountainside and the trail is beautiful. It's really hard to believe that we are in Alaska. The Chilkoot Trail is said to be the largest open-air museum. Unfortunately, many of the artifacts have disappeared, taken away by other hikers wanting to bring back souvenirs. With the vegetation, we can't really see the canyon, but we can see that with one misstep, it goes down quickly.
Ouais.
At our feet, a wire that we believe was a telegraph wire.
Ah, le fil de télégraphe encore.
Oui, effectivement. S'il y a quelqu'un qui veut en lancer un appel à l'aide.
The trail takes us to Pleasant Camp. After a hard climb in the canyon, the stampeders were happy to arrive here where the ground was flatter. We take the opportunity to stop for lunch. From Pleasant Camp, the trail was lined with an almost unbroken line of tents to Sheep Camp.
D'accord. Oui.
Arrival at Sheep Camp, the last camp before climbing the Chilkoot Pass and crossing the border. This is the biggest camp as all hikers stop here, hence the abundance of food lockers.
Qu'est-ce qu'il y a?
The main shelter was built in 2016. Other developments are under construction. I imagined Sheep Camp as an open place, probably because of these historical pictures. Pictures showing a certain Jack London, here in the foreground at the age of 22. From a few tents, the population of the camp increased rapidly when winter slowed down or stopped the progress of the stampeders. In a very short period of time, 16 hotels, 14 restaurants, 13 stores, 5 doctors, 3 bars, 2 dance halls, 2 laundries, public baths, a hospital and a post office were at the disposal of a transient population estimated at 6,000 to 8,000 people. Renee communicates her instructions to Said. Sheep Camp today. Sheep Camp is quite large. Dark and smelly compost toilet. Some groups use porters to bring their food to the camps and lighten their backpacks. Renee manages to get a beer from the porters. From the first evening, Said found himself with a leaky brand new Nemo Vector inflatable mattress. We try to find the leak.
shit, ça bouillonne, les amis. Regarde les trous. Regarde les trous. Louis, ça va, on en a besoin comme preuve.
5 trous. C'est un matelas identique au tien.
Oui, oui.
Je pense qu'on devrait le retourner au magasin.
Oui.
C'est un crayon en fait pour marquer là.
Oui, on s'en va changer ça à soir.
Ouais. Non, il faut que je sache s'il y en a d'autres parce que je vais essayer de réparer ça.
Oui.
Parce que tu veux dormir ce soir, hein? Là, ça va prendre un linge pour essuyer, pour que tu puisses l'essayer.
Ça prendrait un crayon feuille pour rester.
Oui, j'en ai un dans mon sac. J'ai 11 et 12. Une serviette pour l'essuyer. Je vais aller chercher un marqueur. Oui, parce qu'avant de pouvoir le réparer, il faut qu'il sèche, ok? Fait que je vais aller chercher ça.
Merci.
Bad product. Bad product.
Bad product.
That evening, our young park warden gives us historical information and advice for crossing the Chilkoot Pass the next day.
It's a good place to take a mid-morning rest as well as reconsolidate your group. At the scales, I would
Today, it's hit or miss, as they say. Departure from sheep camp at 5:30 a.m. There is light because, in fact, it's never completely dark at this time of the year in Alaska. From sheep camp, we go through the scales, climb the famous Chilkoot Pass, and stop at Happy Camp. We climbed a long hill, which is aptly named because it's a continuous ascent of 5 kilometers, during which we emerge from the forest. At the beginning of the gold rush, an agreement had been reached with the Tlingit natives, allowing the passage of stampeders in exchange for hiring Tlingits as porters. This agreement did not last long, as the influx of stampeders quickly outstripped the available Tlingit workforce. Remains of the cable car are still visible.
It's your turn to put on a layer or take a break? Yeah, alright. We'll probably do this a lot today.
We play leapfrog with a group of teenagers throughout the day. Some used horses to haul their supplies. Unfortunately, the horse's life was not worth much, and many horses died on the trail.
Let's continue, René. Smile, you're on TV.
The less fortunate stampeders saw the supplies of the more fortunate leaving Canyon City and being delivered over their heads beyond the Chilkoot Pass.
Hello. Hey, oui, hein. Hey, oui.
Hey, c'est ça, c'est beau, hein?
Many stampeders did not get this far because the effort was so great. and for about 60 people who had made it here. The adventure ended on April 3, 1898, Palm Sunday, when an avalanche buried them under 15 meters of snow.
Oh, wow.
The Scales, a somewhat flat area before the big climb over the Chilkoot Pass. Here, supplies were weighed to pay the porters who hauled them over the pass according to the weight carried. From here, there isn't really a trail anymore. Sticks planted in the rocks are used as markers to find our way. On the ground, the remains of cable car cables and pulleys. The famous golden stairs. Steps were carved out of snow and ice to make a staircase. From below, the pass appears vertical. Climbing the pass was actually easier when there was snow than without snow. And here's the famous picture that struck the imagination of the Klondike Gold Rush.
On camera. You're gonna be on YouTube.
Sticks in the ground are essential to stay on the right path. We do not always see very well where to go by looking at the rocks in front of our eyes. For stampeders, it was not enough to climb the Chilkoot Pass and move on. To haul over all their supplies, they could climb the pass 40 times. Here you can see the remains of the cable cars. Until the 1990s, there were a few pylons that were still standing. And when it's not the hikers that make the artifacts disappear, it's nature that takes care of it. The Chilkoot Pass has false peaks. We think we've reached the top, but no, it continues. At least we can rest a little bit before continuing. In addition to the cable car, there were also winches powered by primitive gasoline engines that pulled loads to the top of the pass.
On va de l'autre côté! Hey, the summit. A ton of goods. Hey, hey.
A ton of goods. Yes, that was the amount required to cross the border. If a stampeder did not have his ton of food and supplies with him, he had to go back down and get more supplies. It was the Northwest Mounted Police who checked the loads. They themselves survived in extremely harsh conditions. Once you cross the Canadian border, you think you're in Yukon. But no, we're actually at the northwest tip of British Columbia. The border with Yukon is north of Bennett Lake. A tiny shelter allows us to rest a little before continuing. We have to put layers back on because we cool down quickly after the effort of the climb. We can apparently post a postcard from here. Someone comes by once a year to pick up the cards and put them in a mailbox. And one of the reasons why we left sheep camp at 5:30 a.m. is that we have to pass the avalanche zone while the avalanche danger is at a minimum. With the Chilkoot Pass behind us, the difference in climate is striking. The landscape now matches my idea of Alaska. Crater Lake. When we talk about restaurants on the Chilkoot Trail, this is what it looked like. From here, walking on Crater Lake while it was frozen made getting ahead much easier. For us, the melting snow poses several challenges. Creeks are difficult to cross. Even if we did the hardest part, we still have a long way to go before arriving at Happy Camp. Since we have to cross snowfields, we frequently have to put on and take off our crampons. When we see this sign, we almost start crying. Not with joy, but with despair because we are spent. The Chilkoot Trail was not the only way to get to Bennett Lake. There was also the White Pass Trail from Skagway. That trail was actually easier, but a little longer than the Chilkoot Trail. Arrival at Happy Camp in mid-afternoon. I don't think I've ever been so exhausted at the end of a day's hike. It took us almost 10 hours to cover a distance of barely 13 kilometers. I feel like I've done twice as much. Happy Camp is so named because the Stampeders were happy to arrive here after climbing over the pass. In practice, there was nothing happy about being here, and the Stampeders quickly continued on their way. Will we have sun today? That would be wonderful. The shelters and toilets on the Canadian side are in better condition and more welcoming than on the American side. Measures to avoid attracting bears are even stricter. Absolutely all wastewater, including water for brushing teeth, must be poured into underground tanks. From Happy Camp, we hiked today to Lindeman City with a stop at Deep Lake. Hiking today is easier. We go down more than we go up. The temperature remains cold. Throughout the day, we see artifacts and animal bones. Long Lake.
Ça, en fait, ça a l'air d'être un traîneau.
A stop at Deep Lake Camp. A German couple follows about the same schedule as us. The man is a giant. He must be 2 meters high. The remains of a small boat. Some stampeders are said to have tried to use boats made of canvas with a metal frame. This may be one of them. An entrepreneur tried to sell some at the top of the Chilkoot Pass, but had not much success. The canvas boats are still there, but visible only when the snow is melted. From here to Lindeman City, it's a continuous descent. We just have to lift our feet and move forward. During our stop at Deep Lake, the park warden advised us on the best place to camp in Lindeman City. Lindeman City was a tent city. With Bennett Lake nearby, stampeders did not stay here for long. The biggest challenge is how to set up your tent without stepping on a pile of moose droppings. You only have to look on the ground to see the remains of the Stampeder's passage. We can count on Jean-Michel to prepare extraordinary camping food. Last leg of the Chilkoot Trail, arriving at Bennett Lake with a stop at Loon Lake. Alas, not all the Stampeders came back from this adventure. For some, the adventure stopped here in 1898. Charles is intrigued by this tomb because he has Fortin ancestors and his family who partook in the gold rush. For this last day of hiking, the trail is sparse with trees. And here it is at last, Bennett Lake.
C'est là qu'on s'en va.
Loon Lake.
Hi, visitors. Please close the door when you leave.
A few raindrops start falling, hardly enough to wet our bags. And the closer we get to Bennett Lake, the sandier the soil becomes. Bennett Lake, and the picture of the victory. The only building from the gold rush that still stands today. This is what it looked like at the time, and what the place looked like. The train station that brings most hikers back to Carcross or Skagway. It was the construction of the railroad along the White Pass Trail that ended the use of the Chilkoot Trail in 1899. Once there, the game was not one for the Stampeders. They had to build a boat to get to the Klondike. Because after hiking and hauling their supplies 53 kilometers from Dye to Bennett, you still have to sail 850 kilometers on the Yukon River to reach the Klondike. That was the poor man's route. The rich man's route was to sail from Seattle to St. Michael's, Alaska, and then up the Yukon River to the Klondike in a shallow draft boat. That route was physically undemanding, but very few managed to make it to the destination. Going up the river is difficult, and the Yukon River is frozen for much of the year. For us, we are making an old dream come true. Returning to civilization aboard a bush plane. Part of our group gets on board the Cessna 206. And the rest gets on board a beaver. The weather is unfortunately not very good today. We return directly to Whitehorse. If the weather had been better, our pilots would have taken us for a tour of the glaciers, and we would have had an aerial view of the trail we were on over the last couple of days. and our pilot makes a soft landing.
That was easy.
Our adventure will continue in and around Dawson City, where we will play the game of trying to find gold the old-fashioned way. First of all, a short course on the technique of gold panning. Then, we try to find gold in a creek open to the general public. And our day ends with a few flakes of gold. We first arrived in Whitehorse. And if I had taken the Trans-Canada Trail that passes close to my home, I would have arrived here. We don't waste time before trying the local beer. Here, when it comes to heritage preservation, they're not kidding. And here's the famous Yukon River. You just have to let yourself drift to reach the Klondike. No matter where we go, the Gold Rush folklore is present. Today, destination Skagway, starting with breakfast at Tombstone. Once our bellies are full, we cross the street to wait for the bus. On the way to Skagway, our driver makes a first stop at Emerald Lake, where our photographers rush to take pictures. We continue to Carcross, Yukon, a small village at the north end of Bennett Lake. The place gets its name from Caribou Crossing. It is one of the stops of the train from Skagway. At the time of our stopover, there are not many people. As we get closer to the coast, the mountains get higher and higher and more impressive. Arrival at the historic Skagway Inn, where we will be staying.
René, un petit peu à l'intérieur.
Ah, ok, on se regroupe un peu là. Est-ce qu'on peut juste continuer de placoter là, c'est ça là?
Oui.
C'est un group shot? Non, on regarde pas la caméra là.
Ah, on fait comme si de rien n'était. On fait comme si ça n'était pas filmé.
Skagway is a city that lives exclusively from cruise ship tourism. There is only one theme, the Gold Rush. We have lunch at the Bonanza Bar and Grill. And we go to the trail center to get our permits for the Chilkoot Trail. A 10-minute video explains what to do if we encounter a bear, and we get our permits. In the evening, once all the tourists are back in the cruise ships, they roll up the sidewalks and close the city. Alan wins the prize for the heaviest backpack with 30 kilos or 66 pounds.
Toute la chose que les gens m'ont donné, le foulard.
On peut en prendre.
Ouais, est-ce qu'on peut peut-être...
Moi, j'ai
Renee wins the prize for the lightest backpack with 19 kilos or 42 pounds. Our friendly hostel owner offers us transportation to the trailhead.
Ouais.
Renee proves to us that we can fit the luggage of 5 people in a Ford Edge. We had booked a Ford Expedition. Unfortunately, there was none when we went to pick it up. It was broken down in Dawson City. From Whitehorse, Dawson City is 530 kilometers away, with a few possible stops along the way, including Bryburn Lodge, where you will find the largest buns in the world. Have you ever seen Renee with a bigger smile? Then, the Gold Panther Restaurant and the Moose Creek Lodge. Apart from these 3 places, there is nothing. Not too surprising, it is the Gold Rush epic that is the main theme of the historic part of Dawson City. It may seem a bit superficial, but the Diamond Tooth Gertie's show was for me the moment when the magic of the Klondike took effect. Almost 11 o'clock in the evening, and there is still light. We are only a few hundred kilometers from the Arctic Circle. Guided tour of Dawson City in French.
Ici derrière moi, le beau fleuve Yukon. Nous sommes actuellement sur le territoire traditionnel de la tribu autochtone des Klondike Gold. Voici leur centre culturel. Je vous invite à visiter pour apprendre sur leur histoire et leur culture, qui bien sûr précède celle de la rue vers nord ici.
The whole Yukon seemed very francophile to us. A number of buildings have been restored to what they were at the time of the Gold Rush. Mrs. Tremblay's store. Although she arrived in 1894, it is from 1913 to 1936 that she will keep her store. The highlight of Dawson City folklore is the Sourtoe Cocktail. People stand in line with a glass of hard liquor in their hand. While Renee waits in line, a young Belgian couple tells us about the gold nugget they found in the creek accessible to the public. We will go tomorrow. The Sourtoe Cocktail consists of drinking a glass of strong alcohol in which the captain has placed a mummified human big toe. Joanne is the first. The captain explains the rules and puts the toe in her glass. But wait, to get the certificate, the toe must have touched the drinker's lips. It's Renee's turn. We give the money to the captain. Give proof of identity. And drink. It's Charles' turn. He does it like a professional. Our venerable captain sadly passed away 1 year after our passage. What pride to come out with your certificate.
Yes! Sourtoe member.
Said and I chose to pass our turn. I take advantage of the morning sun to go take pictures of Dawson City. In addition to beautiful hotels, restaurants, stores, and well-preserved historic houses, other buildings are in worse condition. Poor insulation melts the permafrost, with the results seen here. We see a lot of motorcycles and expedition vehicles. The adventure is never far from here. The Midnight Dome gives us a breathtaking view of Dawson City and the region. Looking at satellite pictures of Dawson City, we can see grooves. And this is what made them. This machine, a dredge, floated and dredged the bottom of creeks to get the gold on top of the bedrock. Our French-speaking guide from Abitibi shows us around. Once the gold at the bottom of the creeks had been collected, the small prospectors were replaced by companies with more industrial means. The more astonishing thing is that this machine ran on electricity supplied by a dam about 50 kilometers away. Today, there are an estimated 80 companies still mining gold in the Klondike. Last thing, finding gold. We go to Claim 33 to receive training on how to find gold with a pan. To say the least, you have to be patient. Once at the river, one buys a sandbag possibly containing gold, but without guarantee. It is here that the young Belgian couple found an impressive nugget. We settle down. We try. Looks like Charles found something. It's time to go home. But before that, we heard a lot of good things about the Tombstone Territorial Park. We decide to go and have a look. The place is spectacular. It's a pity that we don't have time to do a little hiking, because tomorrow morning, a plane will be waiting for us to return home.